Normally I like to stand and be quite proactive, but I'm just sitting at the moment. Because when you're a targeted individual, which I'll get into, you sleep awake, you're targeted. And there is no doubt about it. It's a moral outrage, but there you go. But I'll go into that in a moment. To begin with then, to start the lecture. So as I say, I go around the country and I lecture to 40 people, 80 people, 10 people, 2 people. It doesn't really matter. I'd just like to thank the organisers for having me this evening. This is what happens when an ordinary man, so I thought, like myself, gets mixed up over his head in covert operations, UFOs, and people who are unethical, people who are running riot without accountability, and the fact that it has cost me my mother, it's cost me my father, although he was an abuser, but it's cost him, it's cost me nearly my sanity with all this, and all because in a certain day in 1999 a UFO came over my house and illuminated a TV antenna, and that's how the saga went. But it goes back earlier than that, which I'll go into. But this is my mother, bless her, and she suffered Alzheimer's and dementia for the first 3 years. When she had, when they first diagnosed her with Alzheimer's, they realised this because she'd become mysteriously incontinent, and I had to look after her for 3 years. For 3 years I had to look after her with that condition. We couldn't get help, and for a son to do that for her, it was absolutely shocking. I've earned my green beret with all this almost certainly, and the Alzheimer's got to her. The dementia shut her down. The Alzheimer's eventually truly shut her down, and I believe that she was targeted. I believe that she was targeted by malevolent consciousness, by some sort of technology, because she used to wake up in the night terrified, and sometimes I would go through the night without any sleep, and I know that I have been targeted, which is another story. The phenomenon of the targeted individual is not a phenomena, it's real. And if you're a contact experiencer like myself, where you go just beyond the element of the UFO phenomena that's coming in, the strange lights, you go beyond that and into who they are behind the strange lights, that's when you start to get the trouble. Lewis, the guy from the Advanced Threat Aviation Program, and a few others, he stands up in front of MUFON and he tells you, as an audience, he tells you that the Department of Defence have done this, the Department of Defence have done that, we've researched it, we've got anomalous phenomenon. The Ministry of Defence and the Project Condign did the same thing, cost them millions, anomalous phenomena. None dare say alien, none dare say what's really going on, and it's about time that some of those men grew some spine and actually said what was going on, because I for one know what's going on, and it's through no coincidence that happened to me. So that's my mother, bless her, getting married in 1959, and this is me. So I've been to hell and back. There's a cost to it, but I want to show you what this close encounter experience is really about. Over the skies of the UK, I know for a fact that these people behind the UFOs are very sharp, they're very intelligent. The majority of contact experiencers who are the real deal, who are involved with it all, will experience contact with women. Female ET, definitely. And there's some of it that I can't talk about for my own safety. There's stuff going on that I can't talk about for my own safety. But basically, it affected my mother. And over the skies of the UK, we see constantly this theme of communication going on. And the fact that I was targeted, there is a cost. So I have literally been to hell and back. And I think once again that I've earned my spurs, I've earned my green beret. Contact experiencers like myself are not sure of our life expectancy. We're not sure how much we're going to get because we are targeted. We truly are, by different levels of consciousness. That's me in the early days at my first talk in 2005 at a UFO conference in Leeds, where I didn't know my way around PowerPoint, and I'm reading from a script about it. I'm reading from a script about all that was going on with me, and what would happen was this. I would focus on the MK Ultra. You've all heard of that, haven't you? I would focus on the MK Ultra stuff that they did to me. For example, and I make no apology for it, they would be waking me up at 3 and 4 in the morning, gunfire, alarm sounds, you name it, they would do it, because they were testing technology, but equally, they were trying to find out why these UFOs were coming in. That's the thing. And so it became very difficult at one point to try and live a normal life. And you cannot live a normal life because of what has gone on. You really can't. So that's being targeted because of that. Now, that's typical. That is actually typical of UFOs that I have seen. There was one where I did a talk in a field at Holy Island, and just before I went in, I just took a random shot of the background. And Jason from UFO Only, who I highly recommend as a speaker, who does all my image analysis, he brings my images to life. They're not aircraft, they are who they say they are, they're UFOs, the people behind them are highly intelligent, the people behind them are clued up, and it goes beyond kind of like it goes beyond what is written about. You've got Good, you've got Wilcox and all that party. These beings are highly intelligent, and that's one of the UFOs walking me home. Actually, I'll call her she because it's a female, piloted by a female, she's actually walking me home. That's another UFO taken, it's a plasma type UFO, taken at Holy Island. I didn't know it was there until Jason saw it on an image. I don't know how the hell he noticed it, but he did, and there it is coming in at speed. Bearing in mind that the Ministry of Defence, under Project Condign, have researched this extensively to find out what they are. And it's more James Cameron's The Abyss than you could ever imagine. They're more like us than you could ever imagine. And so begins this saga that I got myself into by being a contact experiencer. And my biggest occupational hazard, ladies and gentlemen, is cranks. I have cranks appearing in front of me. I had one guy who claimed he worked for the Mossad, flew from New York to Germany figures in this story, flew from New York to Germany, Germany to London, London to York, to meet me for an hour and a half in a pub to discuss UFOs, and he claimed he worked for the Mossad. We had people claiming to be from the Foreign Office, We've had people claiming to be from MI5. We've had people who claim to be working for the Illuminati. That's a good one. People emailing you saying, I work for the Illuminati, my name is Agent 33, we want to help you, we want to join us. And when you say to them, after you've had all this effing circus going on around you, that I don't want anything from you, their manner gets extremely violent towards you. They threaten you, they don't like it because you're not cooperating. Actually, you're not feeding their narcissism. Narcissism and this subject seem to go hand in hand. So if I stood here now and said I'm going to put the robes on and I'm an ambassador to the aliens and I'm the chosen one and all this, no, you're in great trouble. You've got to understand the narcissism side of things. But for example, I met two people from the Foreign Office who claimed that they were on the hunt for Saddam's nuclear missiles. The guy from the Air Force who claimed that he worked for the United States Air Force and he wanted to know all about my UFO goings-on, which was incredible really, because when I did an investigation on him, I discovered that he was actually a colonel in the Air Force who'd been done for child pornography on a base in Colorado. A little bit of checking, it takes you a long way. So these people claiming to be from the intelligence services are absolutely everywhere. These cranks I've got to be aware of. But Germany, that's the situation that goes on with Germany. It's a very important factor in my story. In my early years, my first vision was like a Hindu one. I'm sure you're all aware of creative visualization, but in my early years, that was my first vision, which was like a Hindu vision of an elephant walking through the window, walking through the wall. That's what actually happened. It is biblical, it is Gita in nature. The symbology and all that's going on is because of how closely biblical, whatever you want to call it, meets with UFO, meets with consciousness. There are very close links to this. Humanity's consciousness is controlled. I'll come to that later. But basically, it was Hindu in nature, and that's my father, who had miraculous healing abilities, who also got targeted, I do believe. That's my father trying to tell me that what I've seen is not correct. That's me screaming in my cot. I go hysterical, and I end up cutting my lip, and I'm bleeding everywhere because I'm absolutely hysterical over what I see. During the 47 years of me being on this earth, those in the UFOs have referenced that vision constantly. They knew me from birth before I knew them. Why? Because what it's looking like at the moment, I lost my mother, I lost my father, the cost has been absolutely mental. Why this is going on is constantly eluding me. But they came out with this phrase, Yazmat. And Yazmat means a paradox. It means as you sow, so you reap. It also means royal German bloodline as well. It's Sanskrit, but that's from them. That phrase, Yazmat, is from them. In fact, a lot of the information you will hear tonight is from them. It's from the interactions that I've had with the UFOs. I've no investment of making this up. I've certainly no investment in lying, because you couldn't make it up. But what is outrageous is what I've been subjected to by some very strange people. So that's my father. And as you can see, that's me, the Ewok there. And that's my father, who was a powerful healer. He once said to me that for some reason he was approached by the KGB in Vienna, but he never told me why. My father had miraculous healing abilities. My mother, for example, had, not my mother, but a relative that we know had neuralgia. She was screaming in agony, and my father would lay his hands upon her, and he took off the pain instantly. I was there to see it. Equally, my father brought next door's cat back from the dead, but equally, when something happened at a place of work with my mother, where she was sacked in such a terrible way, really, he just said, "I hope the place blows up." And he sat down in the middle of the living room and blew the boiler room of the building up, I kid you not. And this is what really gets people, because he was an abuser, and that's the shameful thing about it, because he had this miraculous ability, but yet he abused me. And not only that, some people find this, I won't go into the abuse details, but some of the things he used to do was, if I was naughty, he would project a migraine at me so powerful that I would end up sparko on the bed. When I tell this at conferences, people think it's bloody outrageous, and I sit there talking about it because that's how it was, that's how it happened. But and the thing is he got targeted. I believe he was targeted. Doesn't excuse his behaviour, but that's what I believe happened to him. So that was my father, and what a circus that was with him. Bless him. So I've had quite a life with it, and you see, this comes to the kind of the situation I found myself in, because I moved to London in about 96. I got into stage school. It takes a lot of balls to get into a stage school. It was one of the top stage schools. And I remember my father at the time, when I told him this, he just turned round to me and said, yeah, okay. And puffed on his cigarette and went on his merry way. And that was it. He wasn't fazed by it at all. And so I went to London to stage school. And that's when my first UFO incident happened, in about 97 in Praed Street in Paddington, where I saw this UFO coming in. It looked to be hitting a block of flats, similar to the UFOs that you saw in the previous pictures. It seemed to be heading for a block of flats. I was going to run to a fire engine and go, "Look, lads, that plane's going to..." By the time I'd done that, it had vanished completely. And so my liaison would begin, absolutely begin with them. And it was quite incredible. And I hit hard times at drama school, returned to Selby in Yorkshire, where my mother started having bizarre interactions with them. We were both awoken from sleep one evening. My dad was fast asleep, by this orange flash in the sky, two balls of light merging, and I heard, "Hello," just like that. But you see, it's easy to go, yeah, he's hearing voices in his head, yeah. No, it doesn't quite work like that in real life when you're dealing with these guys. What you hear is, instead, it's kind of like outside of you, not inside of you. It's unmistakably them. You know they're there, and they're speaking to you. And it woke my mother up. I'll never forget it. We had poor housing accommodation, very Victorian, in the town of Selby, North Yorkshire. We had an outside toilet. I had no heating. We had no bathroom, and we were in this house. And I used to go to school looking unclean. Everybody used to give me a load of grief over this. I used to be spat at. I used to be called unpleasant names. And this links to when we moved accommodation to another part of town. And I remember when I'd returned from drama school after that first UFO incident, I remember having a dream, this very strange dream, of this woman looking into our old dresser in our old poor housing accommodation, tying her hair back like this. And when she turned round, that's what she looked like. Eyes are greener, skin is bluer, the hair colour is spot on, but she oozed physical fitness. She really, really knew to look after herself. And all her words were to me was, "How do I look?" That was all she said. But later on down the years, as the targeting got worse and as things spiraled, she would appear again in a few years. She's a very important part of the story. So I'll come back to her later. These are my contact experiences. And of course, I was having strange visions as well. Because you see, recently in the media, the US Navy have indicated that they're looking at UFOs, they're disclosing them a bit more, they're monitoring them closely. Well, of course they are, because these guys, it's more James Cameron than the Abyss than you would never know, because I started getting in about 97. Before I could come to terms with what was going on, I started getting strange visions. That's one of my early visions of a submarine and that type of UFO that we've seen, literally tracking it. I mean, literally tracking it. So it's not a New Age platitude. They do monitor nuclear matters. Richard Dolan, I don't know whether you've heard of that researcher, indicated that there's a term called a New Age platitude, whereby it's kind of like the hippie 1970s, the aliens are here to free us from war and let's have peace, dudes, and all. And it's a New Age platitude. No, it is not. As far as these people are concerned in the UFOs, they are closely watching nuclear activity because they know what it is capable of. And when it gets into that area, there's bits of it that there's bits of it you can't really mention. There's bits of it where I suppose other people who know can't really mention. But that is typical of the vision that I had. And I didn't know what it was about. But basically, they are more marine. They're marine in nature. Some of these ETs, extraterrestrials, are marine in nature, and they are watching the world's submarine fleets. It's more, as I say again, James Cameron, the abyss, than we would ever know. And that I couldn't come to terms with what these strange visions were all about. This is the crucial thing about my experiences. That's because those visions were not for me. If you're running a classified operation communicating with aliens, those visions may not be for me. They might be for someone else. Do you get that? Do you get how it kind of, I'm having these baffling visions. I'm having communication going on. Well, that's probably because it's not quite for me, but I'm a cog in a wheel. It took me years to understand that. So my journey begins, and really that's kind of like one of the first UFOs that, here they are, coming in, and I know some people will think, oh, that's an aircraft. No, it's not. We had analysis done on it. That is a type of dropper type UFO. A guy called Stefan run some analysis on it, and it was indicated that we were looking at a UFO that was in the vertical, moving like a coin in the vertical, like that at speed, known as a dropper stone UFO. And that other flash of light that you can see there is actually a triangular type UFO that's going to circle around me, that's going to come over me, and it's an actual precise triangular UFO, which we would call Nordic in nature, blonde, blue-eyed ETs, who we will come to later on. This provoked, however, this continual kind of visions of these UFOs turning up would provoke a very strange reaction from certain quarters. And as you can see there, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a TV antenna, that's a craft, and it illuminates a TV antenna. The UFO clearly illuminates a TV antenna. In fact, the theme of radio antennas surfaces 3 times in my experiences because they're intentionally doing it. They're intentionally hinting at radio antennas because they're trying to establish communication, possibly with our government. Not the US government. They've got it all going on there. That's quite a circus. But our government in particular, they seem to want to communicate with. Here it is again. Craft, in it comes. Craft illuminates the TV antenna. And this provoked a very strange reaction because as somebody said to me who was in the former military, you put that up online and people are going to come out the woodwork. And this is what happened to me. I put that up online. I put this website up pretending that I knew what was going on when I didn't. And I forgot how to sweep the floor spiritually. And so the constant theme, it's quite a learning dojo. I'm telling you these incredible experiences, but I forgot spiritually how to sweep the shop floor. And I came a cropper. I forgot the basic meditation, for example. All the spiritual things that are very real, that these beings understand as well as we do. I forgot them all. And I ended up becoming quite a cropper with it. You can get into trouble with it all. So that would provoke a reaction from Dr. Strangelove and his team, where I started getting followed. I started having strange phone calls. It was very bizarre. That's another example. That's a police helicopter. That's a UFO. And the UFO comes in, illuminates the TV antenna. It's kind of like got 3 domes on it, and it looks like something out of a science fiction movie. I've actually seen what it looks like in real life. It's the equivalent of like their version of a small helicopter. I believe, I've reason to suspect, as you can see, it illuminates the TV antenna there, and I've reason to suspect that they are, well, not reason to suspect, I bet money on it, that they're coming from bases from the ocean, specifically the South Pacific Ocean. I have reason to suspect on that. Excuse me while I just get a drink. Is that okay so far, guys and girls? Yeah? Yeah, good. It's not easy explaining this, but I find that it's quite therapeutic to do so. I've got a heavy cold because the exhaustion constantly stalks you. So, what happened is that this man turned up after the UFO incident started to happen. I started to be awoken in sleep by the most frightening technology, and it was gunfire, it was phones ringing in my head, it was alarm clocks, especially at 6:30 in the morning to wake me up at work, to go to work, and all this kind of thing. It is very sinister. The ethical misconduct that has been going on is very frightening and very sinister. And I kept having dreams about a particular man. I just kept dreaming about him, and that's him. So if you can imagine, the UFOs started coming over, and I started getting some very strange goings on. Very. And I couldn't understand it. This man, we engaged with each other in what can only be described as a private war. I know he's retired. I know that I was under some sort of MK Ultra style mind control. In a democratic society, it's absolutely outrageous what has gone on. But this man, he started targeting me, and that's a dead ringer. That's actually a Hollywood actor who looks exactly like him. And he started identifying himself. He called himself the police of the silence. And he indicated this, that, the other, what he was going to do, what he wasn't going to do. He didn't realise, however, he did not realise that he was being watched by something a bit higher. And there is biblical connotations to this, the mark of the beast, all this kind of thing, mind-invasive technology. It was absolutely outrageous what went on with him. One of his things he used to do, and I've said this while said this in public, I make no apology for it. One of the popular things he used to do is wake me up to go to the toilet. It was a popular thing that he used to do with this technology, which of course is unprovable, which of course it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So we prove that somebody saying this is a lunatic. We prove that somebody saying this is a tinfoil hat wearer, but people are not stupid. We know this goes on. We know it's patented. We know the technology is there. And that man, that's what he was doing. He was waking me up at all hours of the night and day, and his actions were very peculiar, and at times I feared for my safety. And I nailed him one evening. He came into a local pub with a sidekick. He followed me in. I've said this numerous times in public, and he said something to me as I walked past him that was relevant to what was going on that only he would know. Can you imagine having a private conversation with somebody? Having a private conversation with somebody on the phone, and they relay the details of that private conversation as you walk past them. Because in mind control and MK Ultra, it is overt as well as covert surveillance that people are under. They make it quite blindingly obvious. So I was engaged in quite a private war with him to back him off. And I wanted him to reach for the drinks cabinet every time he heard my name. I wanted the circus to be amplified. I wanted the UFOs to come over. I wanted him to be left in no doubt that what he was doing was completely wrong. But it's not what you know, it's what we can prove. We prove that this technology does not exist. We prove I'm paranoid, whether we know, and we dare not say that the technology does exist. So it was like a private war with him. And he was waking me up all hours of the night. And one evening he came into a local pub, and one of the things his female psychic, whoever she was, said to me is, "Why isn't Anthony speaking to us?" And he went, "I don't know. Let's go." He came into that pub specifically. He walked in. He had vehicle keys, and he had money. So he's got a bank account. He's got a car. He developed this technology. He's one of the people behind some very nasty mind-invasive technology, especially UFO contactees. Genuine contactees of UFOs are neurally monitored. And I was also targeted while being a carer, which is a story I'll come to. Whereby the ethical situation I was in was quite horrendous. I'm looking after my mother and being targeted by MK Ultra technology. It's outrageous what went on, and it makes me very sad and upset, but it is what went on. I'm quite prepared to testify to that, but that's him. That's the dead rigger for him. And that is an early image of a US Navy plane. You can't see it. You can't see the US Navy on it, but it's an electronic warfare plane that came into the area where I was filming UFOs. One of the US Navy facilities has visited my website on numerous occasions, and it's been quite a ride. It really has, and that was taken in the area where the UFOs were quite active. So our governments do know that the UFO phenomena does exist. They're covering it up, but there's an element that dare not say why they're covering it up. considering that men died on the beaches of Omaha to stop this tyranny. We've done a good job in keeping that tyranny in place. We really have. That's an image then of what you can barely see. That US Navy plane is on the move. It's over me. It's got US Navy on it. It's an electronic warfare plane, and it's on the move. Well, of course, I made that up. But you couldn't make this up. You just could not make this up at all. I haven't changed my story in nearly 15 years. It'll never change because this is what actually happened to me. And probably this film footage will go down in history as well, I would hope. Then this is again surveillance. Once again, we can see the helicopter. It's an unmarked helicopter. What it's done, in true Jason Bourne style, is it's come, when these UFOs started coming in, so did Dr. Strangelove start to appear, so did his helicopter circus. That helicopter has hovered over the road at the height of a lamppost. The cars are peeping their horns, the fishermen on the riverbank are wondering what the hell's happening, and he is actually level across the road junction. But then, if he's taking measurement analysis and signal gathering intelligence, he needs to be level with me to take a reading. That helicopter bristled with surveillance gear and camera gear. We did a report to James Defence Weekly about it. They said that helicopter is not issued to British forces, it's issued to Canadian and American forces. It's an AS-555, but it's not what you know, it's what we can prove. We will prove that that is a pipe helicopter. We will prove it's an electronic surveillance helicopter doing some surveying. That's what we prove. But it was green, it was unmarked, had a winch on the side of it, and a sliding door variant which astounded a former Lynx pilot who also took a look at the footage. He'd never seen anything quite like it. That was in the 90s when all that was going on. And so that's the unmarked helicopter, as you can see. What he's done in that photo, he's come away from the lamppost, he's now climbed, and he's now over me, watching me very carefully indeed. We can safely say, and I think you'll agree with me, if we applied Occam's razor to this, that something is going on, based on what you've seen so far. And of course, when we say something is going on, I've also had to study psychic warfare. And we know from the psychic war operations of the Cold War, from Dragoon Absorb, Stargate, all the remote viewing stuff, we know that this forms a second element to the UFO phenomena where consciousness is the tool used to communicate with other consciousness. I would suggest in a continuum environment. That's how communication with the UFOs occur. We've got David Morehouse, who had similar problems when he was accidentally shot in the head on exercise. He was a US Ranger. He blew the lid on Project Stargate. He's a top remote viewer. And what happened with him was he had kind of like entities, demonic entities haunting him and all this kind of thing. It nearly cracked him up. Many men involved in these special classified psychic warfare programs have paid a price mentally for it. There's a big cost to it all. One guy I want to focus on in this presentation is a guy called Alexei U. Savin and his Russian remote viewing unit. I want to just focus on him as well. But I also want to focus on the NATO assessment. And this is what happened to me. Mysteriously, I was looking after my mother before her decline in health, and I was put through, I wanted to ring my local council in January 2016. I picked up the phone to hear an American accent going, oh, and then hearing her put the phone down, which I thought was very odd. And then the next minute I know, not only that, the second thing that happened is I dialed the number for the council to be put through to a fluently German-speaking guy who started giving it German fluently to me. I went, I'm very sorry, I've got the wrong number. This story has significance, Germany, it has significance. Now, all this began really because I rang NATO headquarters to ask about a document called the assessment. The assessment, as Sergeant Robert Dean would say, he's sadly passed away now, but he claimed that NATO had done an assessment on UFOs because UFOs were coming in over the Russian border and UFOs were coming in over the NATO border, and each party thought that it was them and that it came close to nuclear war. It came very close to what Robert Dean was saying on this. So NATO did something called the assessment, and it assessed the UFO phenomena, and it indicated in no uncertain terms that they've always been involved with us, that they've been around us for a long time, but this is the most crucial thing of all, and it is true, that aliens look like us and we look like them. There are greys, yes, there are little green men from Mars, but the majority of them, they look like us. And the shock of what they look like is quite staggering. Some of them look absolutely staggering. They could walk in here now, a bit of adjustment, bit of getting used to, but you would know that they're humanoid aliens. They look like us because life in the universe is occupied. It's a populated universe, and they're keeping that quiet for very ulterior motives. And I thought it very odd that this guy I spoke to at Germany, I just thought this all a very odd affair. I really did. And then, of course, there was this strange call that I also got in the narrative of things, actually. Let me think. Yeah, there was also a call I got from France as well. This was very bizarre. After the saga of giving a conference in Watford, I spoke at this big conference in Watford, and I started getting strange phone calls. Now, how the hell they got the phone number, I have no idea. But in this phone number, in this call from France that I got, that's part of the mobile phone number. And I thought, let's just have a look at the esoteric numerology behind that. 4633, Genesis 4633. The Pharaoh wants to know, what is your occupation? That's Genesis 4633. The Pharaoh wants to know, what is your occupation? Well, basically, I'm too good for you, pal, you can't afford me. But basically, that's it. So, what happened was, the guy on the other end of the phone just simply said, is Pam there? I'm looking for Pam, in a Cockney accent from France. He wasn't looking for Pam. Whatever they were doing, they were ringing me up and they were trying to do something. Contact experiencers are up against this all the time. And what is outrageous about it is there is gaping holes in the actions of the ET behind all this. Believe it or not, there's a lot of fence sitting from them. I saw on Facebook the other day somebody who was involved with the Pleiadians asking, why haven't the aliens intervened? Why haven't they done this and why haven't they done that? Well, in real life, intervention is very different from what's written about, and the humanity is not being mollycoddled. In fact, there's a lot written about disclosure, which is just utter bonkum. These ET groups behind these UFOs will only move at a pace that we can understand. I'll come to that later. But they only move at a pace that we will understand, which is a very slow one indeed. And I was doing something for Channel 4 a few years ago, and on the day of that, filming the first... So remember, ladies and gents, I've had all these extraordinary visions, I've had UFO footage, which I'll play back to you. We've had the situation going on of the UFOs coming in over the house, and all this kind of thing, and I'm being stalked, and it's not pleasant. And on this particular day, I was filming for Channel 4, and it's the first day of what I would call the contact with the Nordic ETs, where I had this symbolic vision put in front of me. It was absolutely unbelievable. And what is interesting is that the Royal Institute of International Affairs, it is alleged, and I don't know whether it's true, it might be hearsay, I have no idea, it is alleged that a New Zealand contactee was questioned by them. He said in his book, Coevolution, that the Royal Institute of International Affairs, he had to look him up because a guy flashed his lapel with RIA on it, and they were wanting to know about his car. They were wanting to know why he'd been abducted and so on and so forth. So you see these organisations, they may have a knowledge of them. And the vision that it was to introduce themselves to me after years of them flying over my house. It was to eventually introduce themselves to me. And the vision was absolutely unbelievable, and there it is. So what happened was, this was a Nordic symbolic warning of a global war. Note the theme, UFOs coming in. Note the theme, UFOs illuminating TV antennas. Note the theme of communication. Note that there's a Dr. Strangelove outfit who is completely out of its depth with what is presented to it and what is going on, and they know it and all. And that is the vision that I had, excellently brought to life by Lloyd Canning and an artist called Peter Brennan. That's a real dead ringer for what he looked like. That is so accurate, the hair length, everything. Excuse me. And it is as if he is speaking to me with the volume off. It's absolutely unbelievable. It was as if he was speaking to someone. And there's the clocks, the actual clocks there, where we've got the clocks coming in at 4:45 and 5:00, doomsday clocks they are, and the triangles. Note the field. That field in the lower right is very important to our story. So what we've got is, once again, this theme of that, and then we've got the theme of the avatar symbol, the angelic avatar symbol flashing on and off all the time. Who is he communicating with? He's communicating not with me, he's communicating with someone else. And it was at the height of the Ukraine crisis. And that man was drawing attention to the clocks. Our governments know that these people are real. they were recording in China. The Chinese academics actually are aware of them as a matter of academia, that they exist. And he was speaking to somebody across a time continuum. It's coming up to 8:30. Perhaps we can maybe take a break and I'll move on with some further stuff for you. Is that all right? Yeah? Okay. Because I've got a heavy cold. I do beg your pardon. But basically, that was the vision that we had. And that's what he looked like. And the hair length is correct. Those are the triangles. The field is very important because that field has relevance to it as to where they're turning up. It's at the height of the Ukraine crisis. One clock is saying 11:45 and the other clock is saying 11:55. The Russian government backed down from Ukraine, de-escalated shortly after all that happened. There is something going on out there in the skies above us, and I'd like to tell you a bit more about that, and thank you very much for listening indeed. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. I excuse the bum. I do beg your pardon. And he has appeared now on numerous occasions, just whispering to me about what is going on. The craft, the triangle craft, are intelligent. They have their own mind, and that led to a phone call from Germany. Those craft led to a phone call from Germany, which I'll go into. And as you can see, that's the actual entry in my journal of what I saw. The visions brought to life by Lloyd Canning. There, that's the artwork of Lloyd. He's done a brilliant job of bringing that to life. That's precisely what it was. And once again, note that field, very important, because that field triggered military activity like no other over my town. Town in Yorkshire, major military activity. There he is again. That's him in full view. So it's a good example of him, and indicating that he was from the Andromeda Galaxy. Explorers of the sea said that he was a scientist, 32 Earth years of age, and will return to me in November of last year, which they did. My God, did they. Because not only was I looking after my mother, but if you'd have seen me, I had a beer barrel out here and an umbilical hernia that was 2 inches open, and I'm trying to look after my mother who's got Alzheimer's and dementia. We're getting help with the carers. It's not a pleasant environment to be in when you're also being targeted as well. And I had surgery, major hernia surgery, after moving. So what I did, I lost my mother. It was terrible. I then had to move house. I moved to Southport, and I then had to have major hernia surgery. I think you would agree that that is a lot for a man to handle. And the targeting was unbelievable. And it caused some real argy-bargy, because you're dealing with classified groups who have access to knowledge under something called special access projects. And it's all fenced off and compartmentalised. And sometimes these groups are in conflict with each other. This is clear from these ETs. That man, however, he saved my bacon on a couple of occasions, and I'll go back into them. But this is the thing that happened. So I gave this talk at Watford. And next minute I know, Tuesday afternoon, it was within the days when my mother was okay, and I could look after her. Tuesday afternoon, the phone goes, private number, and there's a guy on the end of it going, "Is that Mr. Topping?" in a German accent. "My name is Klaus. I represent..." He came out with this alphabet agency that I hadn't heard of, but then he said, "We represent the security of the Constitution of Germany." And then he said, "Oh, Mr. Topping, we're all friends now, the Cold War is over." And I said to him, "We're not friends, the Cold War isn't over, and if I deem in my experiences something to be classified and secretive, I'm not going to tell you. Is that clear? I'm not going to tell you." So it's that simple. So he started going on about what I wasn't talking about, and the UFOs, the triangle craft. What did they look like? What intelligence were they? Were they artificially intelligent? What is it? He hammered me again. What is it I'm not talking about? Well, he's not going to get to know. Then he asked, "Are the royal family lizards?" Well, I'm a bit of a fan of Prince Harry, actually, I said to him, but there you go. They always ask that question. And it was kind of like very disrespectful, because he phoned me on a private number while not explaining why he got my number, and indicated me, rather darkly, comically, indicated to me that he was above a restaurant in Frankfurt, his office was, come and look him up, which I thought was extremely bizarre, but that's the organisation that he seemed to represent. German intelligence is very accurate on the UFO phenomenon, having dealt with it in World War II when they had a lady called Marie Osric, I think she's pronounced, whose hair length, she said, could communicate with aliens. What is interesting is she did some channel drawings of UFOs, to which the German generals at the time in engineering indicated were actual drawings of UFOs and had engineering value. It is interesting to note that she mysteriously disappeared. I think she represented the Full Society. She mysteriously disappeared, but I got an email a few weeks ago about a sister or cousin is still alive in Vienna, and perhaps I could have a chat to her. No idea why that was. But there you go. So this guy, claiming to be a German secret police guy, is wanting information about this. That's because governments are aware. I don't believe it was a crank call. I believe he was indeed after information. But you see, with modern computer technology, you've no idea what he's doing on the end of that phone and what analysis he's running. He could even be running lie detector software on me. You just don't know. But my story has not changed in years, and it never will change, because this is what actually happened to me. And he went on his merry way, but it is related. The German government does this very interesting story, because it is related. The German government have been deeply involved in UFOs from Antarctica to the present day. In fact, it is said that Operation High Jump consisted of the Americans going to Antarctica to tackle the Germans. However, the first people to tackle the Germans in Antarctica were the Special Boat Squadron under something called Operation Tamerlan. Highly recommend you look it up. Operation Tamerlan was about the fact that the witness indicated, and he not changed his story in over 10 years, that Special Boat Squadron were dispatched to Antarctica because some members of the British Army had been attacked by polar men, it is said, and they had to investigate what was going on. And according to the witness, the U-boats were there, they were in Antarctica, there was a big firefight went on, and that was called Operation Tamerlan. Then, of course, there was Operation High Jump. The jury's out on that, obviously. But there was something that happened in Germany as well with an NSA listening station called the Gulf Breeze 6 incident, whereby men with Ouija boards, who were members of this NSA listening station, had been told that there was a nuclear war coming. And they indicated they all went absent without leave, and they went to Florida, to the Gulf Breeze area, which is called, I think, and they called 6, because there were 6 of them, to film UFOs. They were adamant that there was some sort of conflict going on. And look again here. Look at that. Conflict. Doomsday clocks. Intervention. Germany. These guys suddenly saying that there's going to be a conflict, we need to get the hell out of here. The UFOs have told us, or the Ouija board has told us this. There's some sort of theme running through it. Some sort of theme running through it. And I strongly believe that this German guy who phoned me, he was fluent in Sanskrit. He knew Sanskrit. He knew exactly what was going on. He was a very clever man, and he was trying to get to the bottom of it himself. So there is, ladies and gents, something going on. And of course, this is when we move to Alexei Savin, the Russian guy, and that's a very accurate rendition from his remote viewing team of what an extraterrestrial humanoid looks like. Very accurate. The hair, the eyes, very beautiful, very feminine, very nice indeed. And what he did was he selected people with inexplicable powers, and he formed a unit called Troop 10,003. Troop 10,003 consisted of psychics, but they weren't just psychics that he recruited, they were women. He used women, and only women, because he said that women make the best psychics, women are the most intuitive, women just know. So he used an army of women. I've got to say, I was a supervisor at my last place of work, and I have to say they were an all-female team, and they were brilliant. They just got on with the job. So I can see where he's coming from. Women are good. Therefore, that's what they did. Foresee the future, they can influence the situation and behaviour of people. That's known by the Russians as walk-in mind operations. That's when you start the collision then, in biblical proportions, when you start influencing planetary affairs with the remote viewing capabilities. They would probably have discovered the demonic, and there would have been a collision. They'd have probably discovered aliens as well controlling humanity at some level. There'd have been a collision. Strangely enough, on their website, which is called New Cosmology, there's a reference to the fact that the CIA funded their remote viewing program, but they kept it quiet. And Mr. Savin is responsible. What he said was this. He gave an interview to Pravda as a general, and he said that he used women because they were the best, but he also said that his women team had communicated with extraterrestrials who gave medical information only. Nothing military was given by them, only medical information. Now, I wrote to them and asked about this and whether they would disclose it, and the reply I got from them was, Tony, open your heart to them, they will tell you. That's all I got, a 2-sentence reply to them. But that was Troop 10,003, and the site is called New Cosmology. And some of the men involved in all that, including the Americans, who were involved in the remote viewing programs, have had massive spiritual awakenings. And as I've repeatedly said, if these experiences that I've had, if you forget to sweep the floor spiritually, you'll get into trouble with it. You will be put in a spiritual dojo like no other, which is what it is. And you'll struggle with it, and you'll try and get to the mastery of it, and it's very difficult. But that's what happened to those men. And this, of course, there's another thing that happened to me as well to do with the BBC One show. That is a plasma-type UFO, and these findings have been emitted by the new scientific paradigm that we currently see at the moment. That's Jason. He's done some filtering on the UFO that I filmed near Holy Island. As you can see, he's done a very good job there. And this is Project Hesdalen in Norway, where you've got the lights of Project Hesdalen there. And what happened was that the Norwegian government were involved in it. Research scientists, various organisations turned up at Hesdalen in Norway to discover what these objects were flying over the Hesdalen area. Some of them are actually maritime. As I repeatedly say, some of them are more closer to the film The Abyss than you would never know. But there you go, that's them. And there's some of the examples there. And the findings, it is interesting because when the One show turned up to film me, it was interesting because I said to the reporter, this guy, you need to know his findings. This is what he said. Massimo, we need to put his findings in. Oh no, we don't want that. No, we'll miss that. Why is that? Because perhaps there is an agenda, which I think there is going on, whereby this is not allowed in the media. The cover-up is very in-depth, but for some reason, I'm maybe being paranoid, they didn't want these in. This guy stuck his neck out and said, and he's an Italian astrophysicist, that thermal plasma, 5% of them are solid objects under intelligent control, and I would also suggest from a higher dimension, and I would also suggest that they are maritime using a technology that is very advanced. This is what he said. But so those there, as we can see, those lights under intelligent control, and there were some other factors to them as well, which is these fascinating factors to them. They show intelligence. Lights dim when a plane is near. In fact, I've seen on numerous occasions when the UFOs have been near me, plane comes in, UFO will disappear and then reappear again when the plane's gone. Because they're under intelligent control, they're respectful of our air traffic. They know. So there we go. There was illumination of increased radiating area. There was many components around a common core, and the lights would dim. And if they are intelligent, who is behind it? Who is behind it? This is of interest while I'm on a roll with this. The India Daily had a load of information dumped on it to do with what appeared to be a think tank, like a government think tank, who had just spilled a load of documents online. I've still got them. You can't see them on the internet now, but I've still got them. And they thoroughly believed that there was plasma life in the universe, plasma beings, and this agency had indicated, whoever they were, that they were measuring these plasma intelligences because minor sonic booms were being caused whenever they appeared. This was very interesting. So those conclusions were emitted. That was the thing that was going on behind it. And humanity, it appears, our oceans are occupied with them. So when I'm filming these UFOs, yes, in some cases the satellites, yes, in some cases they're planes, but when I'm filming these UFOs, it does appear that there is something of a higher intelligence and they're coming from our oceans, which is what I always thought. Then we've got the strange anomaly of a UFO turning up and two of the UFOs chasing the other one away. What possibly could that be about? Two UFOs, one UFO, two of them chase it away. That's because humanity is involved in some sort of Cold War that it doesn't quite understand, that it's not privy to. So I think we've safely reviewed the cost of all this. It has been a cost, and I'm in a spiritual dojo where you forget things spiritually and then come a cropper with it because you've forgotten the basic stuff of spirituality, the basic teachings of it all. You can have all these fantastic experiences. In fact, there's a tradition. You've probably heard of Carlos Castaneda. How many have heard of Carlos Castaneda, the Toltec tradition? There's actually the real Toltec tradition, which is actually, of all places, promoted, came from Atlantis, but its main teachings developed, was reignited again in Africa by a guy called Theon Maris, who's sadly no longer with us, but he was a true Toltec tradition. One of the things the Toltecs said about all this was to be wary of UFOs, that they may not be respecters of our human rights, nor may they have our highest interest at heart, which is a statement that has credence, but also as something called to beware of the path of the high adventure. If you were a Toltec student, this is what they always advised you was the path of high adventure, which is what this is all about. This is a path of high adventure full of pitfalls. The path of low adventure, as an example, would be Master Yoda stirring his cooking pot in the Star Wars thing. Just stirring his cooking pot, all that power, but yet he's stirring his cooking pot. And this is what can happen. You have to be so careful with it. To their horror, the Americans discovered in 1950 that their aircraft were being shot out of the sky by UFOs, and they didn't quite know why. And so everybody's probably heard of Majestic 12, Magic 12, Majority 12. There are other names for it, the Majority of 12. But nobody's probably heard of this agency, which I cover in my research, called the Collins Elite. They were formed separately from MJ12. They believed that there was a demonic component to UFOs, and that there was some type of UFO invasion going on that seemed to manipulate humanity's collective consciousness. You see, as I've always said, if you're going to invade somewhere, you're not going to do it with UFOs and ray guns down the street. You're going to control and manipulate via consciousness, and that's what happened. And there's an accurate... what happened was, when it's known as, actually, it links to something called the UFO Air War of 1950, when US planes were getting shot out of the sky by UFOs, and these guys here in the Starfire jet fighters would go up and confront the UFOs, and they would be firing 12 rockets all at once at the UFOs to, as Frank Fascino in his book says, shoot them down. So you're getting a salvo of 12 rockets going at this UFO craft, and the UFO would destabilise and be shot out of the sky with these 12 explosive rockets because the force field couldn't handle it. Korean Air Ace commented that he was up in his aircraft and it looked like something out of a Wile E. Coyote thing where, you know, you've got the coyote and you've got the meat thing in the middle of the cliff and he falls over. What was happening, he was saying, was at one point one of these UFOs attacked his craft, stripped off the undercarriage, stripped off the wings. He said for a split second he was in mid-air with just a joystick, his seat and the control box and nothing else. And it was like something out of a horrific cartoon scene. He pulled the parachute. What they nailed it down to, the Collins Elite, was the fact that ritual and the occult was a key to bringing in some of these UFOs. In fact, if you look at a book by Linda Moulton Howe called High Strangeness Volume 1, the Department of Defense researched this also. And if you listen to Luis Elizondo at the MUFON conference, who was responsible for the latest developments in the aviation threat identification, blah, blah, you will find that he says that as well, that some people in his Department of Defense were religious people. They grasped and understood, it's probably one of the most true things that he said, they grasped and understood that this was real. So you've got this occult symbolism in our pop media. You've got these pop stars with the old this and that, and they have no idea what they are dealing with. They have no idea that is a reality. They've just no idea what they're dealing with. And so the Collins Elite was formed to counter all this and to look into it. And it was formed via vicars. It was formed because they approached a vicar in Collins, New York, but it also came under the umbrella of MK Often. Often we get our results, often we do not. It began as the earliest psychic warfare programs within the US government, and then it escalated into Project Stargate, the remote viewing programs, and if Dan wants me back, I'll come back if you want that, and I'll do the full remote viewing evening with you where we'll actually get to do some proper remote viewing. All points towards consciousness being used as a tool of communication in a time continuum environment. And Alec Newald wrote this book called Co-Evolution. And in Co-Evolution, he's driving down the road in Auckland, and suddenly he goes missing for 10 days, and he doesn't know where he is. He was off to a wedding, but next minute he knows, he says, he thought he'd had a car accident, he thought he was dead, because he'd got these ghostly figures coming towards him, and it would appear they were actually aliens. And one of these aliens, which is that excellent drawing there of what he looked like, called an elder, indicated that this earth was ruled by a very dark form of life that should be respected. If there's one thing we can take from this is, yes it is, the Bible knew it, it's deeply religious in its connotations, the Collins elite knew it, the Department of Defence know it, so why, and I've posed this argument in public, why then are Russia, China and the superpowers gearing up for nuclear conflict with each other when they know there's a possibility they can be manipulated into that conflict as they were in World War I and World War II? Answers on a postcard, please, but governments know this. They know that they can be manipulated. These guys are meant to be, according to Alec, our nearest dimensional neighbours. He got a knock at the door because the people who turned up on his doorstep indicated to him that they knew that his car, and he didn't know how they knew, his car had been subjected to high electrical voltage and they wanted to take the car away for testing. So they are aware that these people do exist in other dimensions. From what these aliens were saying in the book, and forgive me with the science, I might not have got this quite right, but they're saying that on the reverse side of matter is another wave cycle, another kind of domain with it that is kind of like in reverse, and that is where their life is, that is where their world is. And they were saying that they actually somehow managed with advanced technology to shift their world into another dimension, and it has had consequences for them, hence them wanting to replicate with human beings and build their species up to a certain level. It's a fascinating book, and it's called Co-Evolution. So we've got this biblical theme of good and evil. We've got UFOs coming in, communicating via an antenna. We've got Dr. Strangelove and his merry band of idiots who are totally out of the depth with what is going on. We've got these conflict threat going on. It's all happening in the skies above. Here we go again, look. A theme of unusual flight movements. That's a UFO. That's a triangle. It was filmed in the area where we saw the US Navy plane. In it comes, at the end of this presentation, I'll play you the clips back if you wish. I've got them on here. I'll play them for you. In it comes, it's coming in from the left. It comes in very closely to the right, and then it performs a 360-degree rotation around the main object and flies off at speed, quite intentional, quite on purpose, to demonstrate a theme of unusual flight movement, to demonstrate technology that is far advanced than what we have. There it is again, a theme of communication. It illuminates a TV antenna. I'm having this looked at by a professor of quantum physics in Mexico, because that is a UFO again, same sort of thing. And what's happened is it's coming over my garden. I'll play you the clip there. It's coming over the garden, and it seems to have morphed itself so that it flies through my ham radio antenna, which that is what it is, and flies straight out again as if nothing has happened. The same theme is being used. Antenna, antenna. Somebody somewhere is dropping a hint, a very big hint, that there is a life out there beyond our understanding, perhaps beyond our comprehension, that is trying to communicate with us. And that's the antenna again there. And also the showing of presence. That there is an unmanned aerial vehicle. I think it's a Reaper, but it could be another type of aerial vehicle that's been going around my house. That was going around my house. Remember, we're leading up to the field as well, what I mentioned earlier. That thing has been flying around my house for days, and on this particular day, it flew past, and we had Jason analyse it. Jason said it's a civilian aircraft. It's too small to be a civilian aircraft. It was only a few hundred feet, and that's the best I could do with the camera, but it's the object there at the very top. Can you see that? An elongated object that passes it so fast that even on the slowest playback, it still won't slow down. The speed of it, absolutely tremendous. Somebody worked it out, 106,000 miles per hour quite easily. I don't know how they got to that calculation, but somebody worked it out, miles per hour in the thousands. And it is maritime in nature. It is showing presence. It is quite deliberate that it came near the UAV. Quite deliberate that it did it. There you go again, you can see that. So that's the elongated object. It passes the UAV at tremendous speed over my house. And that's the Pacific UFO. I've said repeatedly, and I've been told that they are from bases in the South Pacific Ocean and other oceans. That's a UFO in the Pacific, taken up close. That's our UFO at great speed. It's the same craft. There is a torpedo UFO that was also seen that I didn't quite snap on camera, that was reported all over the UK, but somebody's accurately snapped that. Now, there's a president in one of the Pacific Islands who has been quite open, I've forgotten his name, more or less indicating that the Americans, the British, the Austro-French, they all know that these UFOs are in his island and it's driving him mad because they're being continually buzzed by them. Who are they was the big question, but there you can see it. So there you go. We know that there is presence from them. We know they're from other galaxies and we know that they're in their oceans. That's a torpedo UFO that was also seen. And then the military appear. And the question is why? The military appeared over my town in one of the biggest air operations, and I must get the name of it. A NOTAM, a notice to airman, was posted on one of the forums. RAF Coningsby, NOTAM, notice to airman, indicating humongous exercise involving the German Luftwaffe over the skies of Selby in North Yorkshire. Huge it was, huge air exercise. They appeared, knowing full well that there was a UFO presence in the town at the time. And as we can see, that's the field. That's the field that our Nordic friend was referring to, that field. So you get that, ladies and gents. That's his symbolic vision. Lloyd Canning has done the field. That's the field in question where I had the most bizarre UFO incident a few years back. Years ago, it was quite a hostile incident. If you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, at the height of one of those trees, a UFO, a small dot of light hovering in front of you at the distance of where that tree is, like gunfight at the OK Corral, looking back at you. It was quite disturbing. It burnt my leg and flew off at speed. It's the theme constantly of a UFO being chased off by other UFOs because humanity seems to be not told that there are other life out there and they appear to have their own dynamics, their own quarrels, and it's being covered up. So that's the field in question, what we're referring to. That's the field in the vision that I had. And that there is the appearance of them over the town. This is 683 Squadron. Rather hilariously, these guys, who I'm sure are here obviously to protect the UK skies, and I personally think that our Air Force has a right to know what is going on, but that's just me. But there they are, and that's the major air operation over my town. That craft flew over my house 7 times, backwards and forwards, with the pilot waving at me. There he is, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. He's got eyeball, ladies and gentlemen, continual eyeball on that field from where he is. And he was waving at me, and I have reason to believe that something must have gone on that I don't know about. But that is bristling with probably gear, equipment. It's Special Forces Aviation Wing over our town, Typhoon jet fighters, the Luftwaffe over our town. Something was going on, and I think it's connected to the UFO phenomenon. It's not just a random exercise that was going on. Don't know whether you can see that, but we ran analysis. This C-130 was practicing short takeoff and land at a Bern aerodrome, and so my team decided to run analysis. And this is what they came up with. I don't know whether you can see that, ladies and gents, from there, but we believed that a UFO was possibly shadowing it, and we weren't wrong. There was something there that was watching. That's the C-130 doing its short takeoff and land thing that it does. That's a UFO shadowing in the background. Can you see that? So there we go, there and there with another filter on it. We know that that UFO is watching our military. We've got antenna. We've got another constant theme of communication with our military at some level from advanced intelligences. This is real, this is going on. That appears to be what I'm picking up from it, and there you go. I think Jason's done a wonderful job there. We can see that there's definitely an anomaly there, and the C-130 is coming in oblivious, absolutely oblivious to what's going on there. And that was the air exercise around that field area where I had my vision and the UFO activity was going on. And I do believe that we are in communication with ET across a space-time continuum. It's a mathematical model. It joins time and space in a single idea. That's very important, that it joins space and time in a single idea. That's very important indeed, because that appears to be how disclosure is operating, how communication with UFOs is operating, how humanity 100 years from now will contact them, how we will have this disclosure going on beyond normal disclosure. You see, at the moment we do have a liaison with aliens, but it's covered up. But these guys, the blonde, blue-eyed people and so on and so forth, appear to want a different sort of liaison. There's as if there's some education going on, some kind of intervention in human affairs occurring at every level. And so your encounters are heard and seen in time. Just give me, I always do this at my talks, just to demonstrate something very rudimentary. Just 2 volunteers just at the front here, possibly free. Just you free stand up. I just want to demonstrate something. Is that all right? You're not going to do anything. Just stand up. That's all you need to do. Just stand up for me. I'll just demonstrate something. You see, what we've got here, as my microphone crashes to the ground, what we've got here is an example of disclosure. What they're basically saying, these ET, is that as a result of our situation in this century now, which is the year 2019, we can imagine that person being me, imagine the guy in the middle being a Nordic alien, and imagine this guy about 100 years into our Earth time future who hasn't seen what's going on now. But due to what's known as the Yasmatic paradox, the paradox that goes on, the collapsing of time, we can clearly see that, let's say, this year 2019 has been seen by this man in, we'll give an example, 2130, and he begins a communication with that guy. So the time environment, the local time environment, is now completely collapsed, and the liaison is continuing at a level that humanity appears to handle, which is indeed approximately 100 years from now. This is according to these experiences that I'm seeing. Please sit down, thank you. But that's basically the example of it. It's as if time collapses and a communication occurs in that environment with the ET and with humanity at some level in our future. We can actually predict that some liaison will be going on then. I can see that a mile away coming after my experiences. So that's kind of like a very simple diagram. If you can imagine that great big signal in time, signaling, we'll call that now, we'll call that a Yasmatic paradox, a signal in time, and disclosure comes by information to groups, from these ET groups to various Earth agencies, for example, at a level of our Royal Air Force. At the moment, the information is compartmentalised, it is hidden away from elected government. That secrecy wall breaks, and then we have this disclosure actually going on with all these agencies. You see a lot of people talk about disclosure and this and that, but you're talking, according to these ET, you're talking a slow, steady uphill climb, 130 years, blah, blah, is what they're talking about, where we will begin to appreciate that we're not alone in the universe as a scientific paradigm. For example, teenagers' years in the Nordic people, I would suggest they, as standard education, know that we are not alone in the universe. They know that there is other life out there as a standard format of education for their people. So can you imagine where that paradigm is going, that the youth, let us say of the blonde, blue-eyed people, know this is a matter of routine education? That's the kind of thing that I find fascinating, what I've gleaned over the years from them. And as you can see, that's another vision drawn by another artist for me, of a vision I had of some type of situation going on in the year 2150. I'm being, what's the word? I'm not fantasizing about it. It actually happened. I can't make head and tail of it. But it looks to be as if the prediction is correct. And it looks to be that some people in our military and our navy begin to grasp and understand the full scientific understanding of what is going on around them at a greater level. Therefore, bringing humanity into a higher evolutionary state, it would appear. I think we're going to have our wars. I think that it's not going to be easy, but that appears to be what's going on. Just thought I'd share that vision with you. And if you're a contactee, if you're a UFO experiencer and a contactee, in the genuine sense, you've technically travelled in time. You're dealing with people who are forward in time, and then you put back in current time. And this causes time displacement, very odd time displacement feelings where you appear to be in the past. So I'm sat here now, but sometimes you have that strange feeling that you're in the past and you've been elsewhere in the future, and it's quite something that you can't quite grasp, but it's there, it's present, because you have been exposed to parallel worlds, parallel human beings, perhaps in parallel universes as well. That can happen. And of course, the latest findings in quantum physics would indicate that. And that's what some of the things that you're not actually told that you've got to deal with, as well as, of course, lower dimensional realms in the biblical sense, like the demonic and things like that going on around humanity. So humanity really is up against it and is on a climb to, I think, some sort of a spiritual ascension in a very real sense in the years and years ahead. I really do think that. And during the time I was looking after my mother, if you'd indulge me with this story, it was at a time when I'm like I am now, not as ill back then, but I was worse than what I am now. I'd got fever. I really wasn't well, and we couldn't get anybody from the care company to look after my mother. It was shocking. There's my mother with the dementia, and it was at a stage where she could just look after herself before she went downhill. Said to my mother, "Mum, I'm ill. Gotta go upstairs. I've got to rest." And I was burning up. And I remember quite clearly being ill, the room spinning. And then this very strange incident happened but of course it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. We can prove he was hallucinating. We can prove he had a fever. We can prove that none of this happened, when in fact it did happen. It really did. Knock at the door. I'm asleep. Knock at the door. Goes downstairs to discover he is stood at my front door. It was just incredible. Next minute I know, cut a long story short, strange noise of the UFO triangle craft, and I'm taken to that place there, the Ribblehead Viaduct, in this dream that I'm having with him. All he says to me is, "Tony, that is a magnificent structure." In my liaison with him, there's been an indication that they've got to go very steady with me because they don't want my blood pressure going through the roof due to stress, or I could have a potential heart attack. So I'm talking real life. You'll read about people embracing the aliens and all that. I'm just talking about real life, that it can be shocking. You wouldn't be human otherwise. It can be my God. It really can happen in that way. So he takes me there, and later on, that appeared in the Ribblehead area. And in fact, the Ribblehead Viaduct area has also UFO phenomena. It's quite active with UFO phenomena. But I just thought that was very interesting that about a month later, that appeared over the Ribblehead Viaduct area, as if, I thought, could be wrong, somebody was making their mark. Back again in these experiences that I am having to this lady who we saw earlier on, and at the time it was absolutely unbelievable what I was going through. I was being targeted. I was trying to look after my mother, who was now coming up to severe dementia problems. I'm trying to put up with all this. And what happened is that we got a glimpse of her. She appeared, this lady, in a craft over my house. She indicated to me that there had been some sort of direct medical intervention on me. The incidents that occurred in Formby and Yorkshire, but this was it. She was morally outraged over what had been going on with me because I'd been targeted, I'd been followed. There's a possibility that the family had been targeted. If you've ever seen that happen, somebody who is an extraterrestrial in a craft above me explaining moral outrage at what she is saying, it was unbelievable. And that is her at 6 o'clock over my house. Now, the baffling thing is she indicates she's a marine extraterrestrial. She comes from another universe, is what she told me, and she indicates that she comes from an ocean in a parallel universe, in another universe. My question is, how the hell is that flying? What technology are they using? Jason has done a very good job of capturing that. She's hovered. I'll play the clip at the end, but she's literally hovering near me at 6 o'clock in the morning, at a time when I was just at my wit's end with everything, really. We were getting assistance, but it was not easy. My mother was going downhill with the Alzheimer's. I've always suspected there was something amiss when you've got this technology going on. I've always suspected that. And there she is, 6 a.m. And of course, to cut a long story short, not only did I have to cope with all that, I lost my mother, bless her dear heart, God rest her soul, and then I had to have hernia surgery. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I was like a beer barrel. I was out here. And he's done a marvellous job as a surgeon, and my belly button was stuck out in an umbilical hernia. I did not look a pretty sight at all. And I remember I had this hernia operation. Now, I'm like a journalist. In the back of my mind, as I'm speaking, there's even something in the back of my mind going, did this really happen? Did this really happen? Because it's human nature. You've got to have your own caveat, your own critical systems of thinking. But what happened to me, they did the operation. Round about, it was November, and round about 2 in the morning, I I was having the strangest goings on where I was being slept awake. If you're a contact experiencer, the sort of things you'll get thrown at you is to be sleeping awake. So you're sleeping, but yet your consciousness, it's very exhausting. And I'm thinking to myself, I've just been operated on. This is not good. I'm being targeted, and I actually feared for my life and thought that I wouldn't get out of the hospital. I say that to you because of how real it can be. Next minute I know something exploded in my head, like a cosmic awareness, and this lady, it's a dead riddle for her, she looked at me and she indicated who she was, and she indicated that she was part of some judiciary defence command that was liaising with humanity. It sounds outrageous, I know. Is it outrageous though? I think it's as real as it gets with me, come to think of it. It really is. And she gave a name, which was, she said her name was Isa. And then she came out with this Hebrew-sounding surname, which I can't remember for the life of me, but it just rolled off the tongue. And it sounded very good indeed. And according to her, in my liaison with them, I seem to have a daughter to one of them. But they're not telling me the full information, and that's very frustrating. But according to them, I have a daughter. And it was a very bizarre experience that I had. And equally, another experience that I'd like to share with you is the Brazilian contactee, who also, it appeared, had a liaison with Nordic extraterrestrials. And what is interesting about this is it's a demonstration, once again, of technology that we do not possess. This constant theme of them showing us this in a non-military way keeps constantly occurring. There, for example, is an imprint of him on his bed sheet. Those bed fibres, he's been taken by Nordic aliens in Brazil who indicate that they're using a mountain to monitor the Earth's environment, which they do, and they have said they do. And what's happened is, if you look there, that's his imprint on the bed sheet. But if you look on the ceiling, he's about 2 foot further forward, where they've literally carried him forward and moved him forward to make a mark on the ceiling. Note the fibres of the cotton. Very important. Note the fibres of the cotton. Because the fibres of the cotton are very revealing in that it appears, from what some of the textile experts were saying to my friend Linda Howe, it appears that that cotton has been subjected to heating technology that we don't possess. The fibres that are scorched have been subjected to high level, high temperature heating, but the fibres right next to it have been subjected to extreme cold. That's why they're not scorched. This has baffled the scientists repeatedly because it's an example of heating technology that we do not possess. The other thing that happened to me is that after the loss of my mother, I started having mental exhaustion like no other. It was absolutely horrendous. I'm still not quite right. I've been through a traumatic time, I'd been operated on, and I was suffering from mental exhaustion. And some intervention occurred, I'll cut a long story short for you, but basically, some intervention occurred via someone else in America who was a contactee, who spoke, she claimed, to her alien people, and they started to appear. And it was quite incredible. And that's actually a UFO that was taken near the Marine Lake. 3 triangles with purple lights appeared for about 5 seconds and then disappeared. And it adjusted my energy. And that there is a beautiful emerald green UFO that came in over Southport where I live. Absolutely incredible. And it stood in midair, hovered very gracefully, and then flew off at speed on its way again. Because the bases of these beings are in the oceans. Now, I'm not well at the moment, but I've never suffered the actual exhaustion again at the frequency and levels that I was having it. They have intervened at many levels. They've intervened. What frustrates me, if I was to be candid and honest, is why? Where's it going? What's the reason? And it appears to be continually eluding me. If we were to believe in reincarnation, perhaps this is the start of something in the next life. I could even think that as well. You know, so there we go. And that's it there, much closer. That's similar to the Marine Lake UFO. 3 beautiful pink lights on a triangle, 5 seconds and then off. And that's her again coming in as an emerald green UFO, just flying off at speed. All silent, nothing to be said. So what we can see, in closing, a very quick estimate of this situation. In my opinion, these UFOs are showing a technology 700 to 800 years ahead. There's continual attempts at communication at our military, specifically directed to our country's military. There is an advanced religious understanding beyond the biblical level of what is going on. There is a nuclear warning from them, and there is attempt at diplomatic comms from them. Certain ET groups in terms of judiciary and legality, are concerned about human abductions. They are concerned. And it does appear that ET have their own judiciary. So this is what I'm seeing, and I'd like to go deeper with it. But as a professor in Mexico was telling me, he wanted to know all about the science. He contacted me, he wanted to know all about the science about them. But I said, Jose, if I tell you, if they give me any information, you will be targeted. You will definitely be targeted by these mysterious forces that are trying to control this. So we can see that there is part of a battle going on behind the scenes, a very deep one. And as we can see, this is a tactical lapel badge. What happens 84 miles northwest of Las Vegas stays northwest of Las Vegas. That is an absolute outrageous remark to make. The gravity and impact of that remark, considering that men died on the beaches of Omaha, for that to be made with that little green alien, is morally reprehensible as far as I'm concerned for very deep reasons. We stand as one. Well, yes, we do. Because that is what you're looking at there is a potential block to humanity's disclosure and humanity going further with technology. And I believe it's a very big sticking point with the US government at the moment. And that will be all I can say on the matter. Luis Elizondo, don't tell that. Don't go beyond that. But it is outrageous what has gone on. Absolutely behind the scenes. It's real. The contact is real. We're not alone in the universe. And that's my story so far, ladies and gentlemen. And if I was to be honest, I'd like some more information from them. I cannot understand why all that went on with my mother while I was having these objects flying over. I'm just being as candid, as honest as possible. But the liaison appears to be continual with them. And the next thing they're going to do, so they tell me, is they're going to literally appear again in a UFO daytime. I know where, I don't know when, but they want to be filmed again from what they're telling me. For some reason, they're sending a message and a very clear signal to somebody that they're here, they're present, and they're trying to assist. And actually, I feel that sat here, I've somehow, in this small group, I've unburdened myself to you. I've talked. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've tried not to exaggerate. And you've been a very pleasant audience. It's been very nice sat here just talking to you about it.